Chris Curtis is crying after his most recent loss just yesterday at UFC Fight Night, Dern versus Ribas. Again, Chris Curtis falls in defeat and decides to cry and whine about it. Now, in this video, I could go into how big of a crybaby he is and how Chris should probably just work on his fighting style and work on getting better as a fighter instead of being so upset with how these results turn out for him. But I will give him some leeway in this respect. This guy fights for a living. Half of your money that you get for fighting as a living comes out of your paycheck when you fail to win a fight. You only get half the money. So I understand why he is so upset. But a lot of the time, his reasoning does not come from that angle of, hey, I lost a fight, I lost a lot of money this time. He genuinely thinks these things may or may not have actually happened to him. Do we throw this back to the Jack Hermansson fight where Jack Hermansson was not fighting the exact style that Chris Curtis wanted him to, so he decided to flip off the card, flip off Jack Hermansson, one of the most respectful guys in the sport, and treat him like trash, treat the crowd like trash, because we were upset that Chris Curtis was not fighting hard enough or not trying to win, because Jack Hermansson was picking and prodding at range. Is it fun to watch? No, it's not, but that's what he's doing, and that's his game plan, and that's how he fights. Chris Curtis is the kind of guy who plays defense, and he plays defense really well. He's one of the best defensive MMA fighters that I've ever seen in my life in terms of the striking realm. He's very, very good, and even in this fight, he did not get knocked out by that head kick. He had his hands up perfectly to block the head kick, but that kick had so much power behind it, it put him down. He was already hurt from strikes before that. But again, moving back to this, Chris Curtis, I understand the frustration. I understand the emotion. You're losing out on a lot of money. But then he decides to come out and say, I'm contemplating a welterweight return after that last second TKO loss the next day. Are the emotions still running high? Is that influencing his posting on Twitter? Maybe, maybe not. I think so, probably, likely, yes. But if this was really, really, truly what it was about in the money from my perspective, then he would not be saying these things about welterweight. He would be upset about the money. Like, hey man, you cost me this, you cost me that. But you were on your way to losing that fight anyway, so he would have lost half of that purse regardless. So it's frustrating from a fan's perspective to see these guys lose half of their money when they go out there and put on a banger fight like that. Like, it was a good, fun fight. One of the few Chris Curtis fights that was actually fun to watch. I enjoyed it. It was a good back and forth technical battle on the feet. It was fun to watch. Chris Curtis in his defense. KOPYLOV was more dangerous, but playing less on the defensive side, and it was close. But listen, KOPYLOV was on his way to winning rounds 1 and 3. Chris Curtis, you would have lost half your paycheck. But we all know that's not what this is about. He is a very emotional fighter. He's a very frustrated fighter. He's probably a very tormented fighter mentally. For whatever reason, Chris Curtis seems to have a problem getting his shit together mentally. Let's listen or to look back at the knockout. It was a great knockout by KOPYLOV. Finished him off. The stoppage was questionable. I think it was a little bit early. Probably could have let it go to the bell. But then that's the whole thing too, is would you have allowed this? Would people be as upset about this if it was a minute to go left in the fight? Probably not. It was just the fact that it was on the last second, literally the last second knockout. Let's take a watch. So he hurts him bad with strikes, punches right before this, and then he throws this head kick. Chris does get his hand up, but the shin kind of connects right on the point of the chin. Beautiful strike by KOPYLOV. Chris, the way that he falls here, will slow it down a little bit so we can inspect this further. But he hits him right there, stumbles, take those weird steps. That's not a good look, okay? Did it put him out cold? No, but he was unable to hold himself up after almost fully blocking that kick. The kick did not land as flush as it needed to put somebody out cold, yes, but he was hurt. And the way that he fell over like that, had no idea where he was. Mark Smith likely looked him in the eyes and saw that, you know what, he's out, I gotta call this off. The referee is not paying attention to the clock, and that's why some of these stoppages are frustrating because, hey man, there was only 10 seconds left to go. Well, the referee is not thinking about that. He's thinking about the safety of the fighter. And if he looks Chris Curtis in the eyes and his eyes are completely lost, rolled up in his head, whatever it was, then of course he's gonna call the fight off. And Chris, waking back up, is a little bit frustrated, but then a commercial break happens, 60, 90 seconds goes by, and Chris Curtis then proceeds to get very, very frustrated about the whole thing because likely he was hurt and out of it and decided in those 60 seconds to 90 seconds that, okay, now I'm realizing what's happening. I've lost the fight by knockout when I wasn't really knocked out. I do kind of remember being there, but he's so discombobulated because he was clearly hurt, stumbling around. I mean, it's crazy how this guy just keeps getting frustrated over and over and over again and having these crying, emotional moments. Again, I understand it from a paycheck perspective, but he doesn't even speak about the paycheck. He thinks that he's a world-class fighter, and Chris Curtis is a good fighter. He's very good defensively. He's got great boxing fundamentals, but you don't kick, you don't wrestle, you don't play jiu-jitsu at all on the ground, you don't try to even sweep or do anything. You strictly box on the feet, man, and it's very frustrating to watch somebody like this who's got very, very good talent, freak athlete, but all he does is box and play defense. I'm sorry, Chris, but if you threw a couple kicks in there, you'd likely be a lot better. And he said this before the Kelvin Gastelum fight. Shout out to Grape Gone for this tweet saying that Chris Curtis may be the softest dude on the UFC roster. He might be, or maybe it's to do with his contract. But the guy seems to take umbrage with every single fucking slight that comes across his table. Win, lose, whatever. He's always got a problem with somebody. And he's a very, very bitter guy. This was to do with the Kelvin Gastelum fight. He gets moved to ranking 11 after that bullshit. I for sure wouldn't have just to prove the story of Kelvin is back. What a fucking joke. Okay, fine. But you're the fighter. You lost the fight. You're playing sore loser. You're always setting yourself up for these excuses afterwards, Chris. And it's a little bit annoying because I don't really dislike Chris Curtis. I don't have any issues with Chris Curtis, but he does seem to always have a problem with everything. First of all, I'm seriously fucking tired of hearing the better guy won or he's the better fighter. You all seriously don't know a damn thing about fighting. I don't care who you are or what you think you saw. The better man did not win. And the shit needs to be addressed. In part, yes, it does need to be addressed with all these storylines and some of the shady stuff that the UFC goes on. I understand what Chris is saying, but he's also just lost the fight. What are you doing? The decision was iffy in that Kelvin Gastelum fight, but you lost the fight. It's over. How long are you going to bitch and moan about this?
29, 28,
we watch this and he's flipping off Jack Hermanson because Jack Hermanson did not play exactly into Chris's wheelhouse. That's unacceptable. That's where I go, all right, this isn't even about the money. I'm on your side if it's about the money, but it's the fact that you're frustrated with your opponent not fighting the way you want him to fight. Flipping off the crowd, it's the crowd's fault, right, Chris? I mean, come on, dude. Get over yourself. He blocks everybody. He blocked Grape Gone. He blocked me for minor comments that I made on his page. It's very, very annoying. Let's listen to what happened last time. Again, this person taking it a little too far, in my opinion, with the third tantrum, legit a man-child. Maybe he is. I don't know. If this was about the money, I'm totally for it. I'm against these guys losing out on half their paycheck, especially when they put on a banger like that. But, dude, you can't act like this. He's watching the fight. He's reacting. He's perfectly fine. But then KOPYLOV comes over here, and he freaks out on KOPYLOV. Yelling, screaming. He's upset. Okay, fine, you can be upset. It's an emotional moment, but you have no right to scream and yell when you got knocked the fuck down, dude. It wasn't like you were standing there taking punches, blocking them, being defensive, and then you got the fight stopped because you were avoiding punches. We've seen that happen. You got knocked down. You couldn't hold yourself up on your feet. You got knocked down, Chris. Pissed off. I mean, listen, Robbie Lawler, in his loss to Ben Askren, he did not think he was out. He reacted the way that a mature adult should have reacted. It's our job as fans to flip out and make a ruckus if something is really wrong because the UFC will see that. As the fighter, and again, if this is about the paycheck, I get it, but this isn't about the paycheck for this guy, and it seems to be very, very clear. Chris, if you want to come on my videos and do an interview with me and talk about this, I'm all for it because I'm on your side, man. I'm on the fighter's side until they start acting like children and reacting like this. It's very frustrating. We understand this. We understand this as adults. We understand this as fight fans in some respects. Some fans lose track of this, but you can't be acting like this. How can you expect to be taken seriously if you're just going to scream at the refs and scream at the fighters and scream at the fans if you lose or something doesn't go your way? That is the problem that I have with Chris Curtis.